to the member if delivered to residents. So just remember MOVE, M-O-V-E, for mold, mildew, odors, filthy conditions, vermin such as rodents or insects, and endangering your score. We need to remember that the customer will rate us on the MOVE, but if they're providing or they're hindering the process, we need to be able to talk to the customer or determine if we have to talk to a base inspector regarding that. Any situation that you encounter that's unusual, you should use your camera and take a picture. If you encounter mold or mildew, if you encounter filthy residents, take that picture, send it in to your dispatcher so that we can have that evidence and work with the base and the customer if need be. Now let's talk about weights and paperwork. You should call in your gross tear, net, and pro gear weights within 24 hours of load. The pro gear weights are important because they can mean the difference between the member owing the government for their move or not. Always ask the member if they have pro gear. The member will declare what is pro, so there's no need to argue with them about what they declare. Pro gear should be noted on the inventories with weights, and you can use a bathroom scale or a constructive weight at the time that you put it on the inventory.
Sean?
Yes.
Can you, for some of those folks out there who may get a little confused, define pro gear?
Pro gear is anything the member uses as professional books or equipment, and they determine what is professional gear. It's that simple.
Okay.
So we also need to know whether the item is a member or spousal pro gear, because the government pays differently or gives credit differently. So you need to put an M-Pro or an S-Pro depending on which one it is. On base paperwork, you just need to send that in to Saginaw ASAP. You no longer need to return that paperwork directly to the agent. You need to send it in to headquarters. And you should send it in to basepapers@stevensworldwide.com or fax it to the fax number listed. Regarding high risk and high value, always ask the member if they have high value items and have the member document them on the high value inventory. Just like pro gear, there's no need to argue with the member about which items are high value. The high value inventory is a critical tool for reducing claims. So if the member says they don't have high value items, be sure to write none on the form and have the member sign it anyway. And that's all I have from the military side of things. Are there any questions?
Oh, we got a ton of them. One van operator wants to know, is the driver paid for the unpack, or is that included in the line haul?
The driver is paid for the unpack as long as he notates it accordingly on the 1850, or the document is also called the loss or damage at delivery form.
As far as pro gear goes, are they limited on how much they are allowed?
That's between the member and the government. We're not to get in the middle of entitlement issues.
Can they call a picture pro gear?
They can call whatever they determine pro gear. We put it on the inventory, and the base will dispute anything they need to dispute at the time that they're figuring out what the member owes.
Great question, great answer. Who asked that question?
Joseph Jackson.
There you go, Joe.
Shoeless Joe.
Yeah.
What if there's an item that is crated, and when it's uncrated, you don't have a clue how to reassemble it?
You need to contact your dispatcher, and they will work with the move coordinator to get a third party if needed, or somebody else who may know how to do that. That doesn't mean that a PVO shouldn't uncrate things that are crated, because that should be, just like unpacking, performed by the PVO unless it's an extremely unusual item.
Kind of curious on what they're talking about. What was crated? They would have to reassemble the chandelier.
Well, it came out of non-temp, you know, and they might not even know what's in the crate until they get to residence. But
yeah. Yeah.
Any unusual situations, the best practice is to let your dispatcher know about it so we can see what options we have.
Can the packing agent hold the GBL and inventories until the driver personally delivers weights and inventories?
Okay, this is a holdover from the old program. Stevens actually receives the GBL now directly from the DPS system, so we no longer have to get the GBL from the origin agent. Stevens has that and sends a copy to the origin agent from here at headquarters. It's also uploaded on SVL Online, which I believe Greg will cover in his segment. So the driver can always has access to that as soon as we have the GBL. The weights and inventories need to be sent into headquarters at base papers at or directly to your dispatch or faxed in so that we have those paperwork and can return it to the base timely.
Yeah, I would imagine that the agent that's doing the OA work today, they're pulling a copy of the paperwork for themselves and leaving the rest of the residents. Or the driver's picking up his paperwork at origin when he's receiving the labor from the OA. So, yeah, that definitely is an old program holdover.
Okay, John would like to know about appliance servicing. What's the process for that?
Well,
I'm assuming that's a washer, probably.
Probably washers, ice makers, dryers.
Okay. First and foremost, we don't disconnect any item or reconnect any item. That's the member's responsibility. The top load washers can be serviced with an appliance pack. The front load washers can be serviced with the bolts if the member has them and the driver is comfortable with performing that service. Otherwise, we set it up with the OA or hire another agency to complete that if necessary. We work as our move coordinators contact the customer far in advance to discuss the washer situation so that we can determine what we need to take care of, whether ordering bolts or any such instance, so that we have that ahead of time so the driver's not trying to figure that out on the load day.
Yeah, I might add a couple comments on that one. You are not doing the customer a favor by hooking up their washer and dryer. And I know that because you think you are, but you're not, because the minute that water leaks and destroys the carpet and goes down the heating vents, the heating ducts in the house, thank you for that favor. You are not electricians. You're not plumbers. You don't install or deinstall ice lines. This is across product lines, folks. This is not just for military. Regardless how much of a handy person you might be, and you think that that's going to increase the customer's appreciation towards your crew, that is not something that we want you to do, period. That's why there are third-party services out there to make sure it's done correctly. All you have to do as a carrier, pay out around $30,000 to replace an entire first floor wooden floor, oak floor throughout the house because she put a load of wash on when she moved in, went to the grocery store for 3 hours, and came back with about 3 inches of water in her house. So I think I've made my point. More questions?
Okay, Rich Hall, why is unpacking paid at 15%? Where's the other 85% go?
The other 85% is paid for packing.
At origin?
Yes.
The packet. The labor typically for at destination unpack is nowhere near what the labor is at origin. And you are not unpacking, and it's not an unpack and put away. The responsibility from a military standpoint is to unpack it and put it on a nearest flat surface for the customer to put away.
Keeping in mind that you want to be tidy about the unpack and placement, we have received several comments about the unpackers just taking the boxes, cutting out the bottom, and dumping everything. So that's not providing customer service.
Right.
While you're putting it on the nearest flat surface and not putting the items away and providing maid service, you need to be courteous and professional about providing that service.
And you know, if there's a situation where the member cannot keep up with you to unpack, I know that there's been times where the member said, just unpack this particular box or that particular box, and I want to unpack others. You need to make sure that you're making notations on your paperwork on that and getting a signature, but doing it in a polite and in a soft manner. Because somewhere along the line, you know, if someone calls and complains, well, they never unpacked for me, and no, we were there to unpack, you know, at least we have some information to go for.
Okay, from John Everett, what about checking off inventories at delivery and the member does not want to check off anything, and then later we'll get a claim that something was missing and they would not check it off? What should the driver do in that instance?
I'll answer that question if you don't mind.
Go right ahead, Jim.
Because that's a general question for all shipments, no matter whether it's a military, a corporate shipment, a COD customer. Inventories are there for a reason. You know, our paperwork and the quality of our paperwork has a direct correlation to our total customer satisfaction scores. I know that the complaint we hear on the reverse side is that our men are moving too fast for the customer to keep up with the checkoff. So you know, you have to be aware of the opposite side of this question as well as the question itself. When a customer refuses to check inventories off, you know, my recommendation is that you call your dispatcher immediately, and your dispatcher will determine what move coordinator should talk to that customer. Because I believe that somebody from corporate needs to talk to that customer about the value of checking off inventories. And if, in fact, the person just continues to insist, I'm not doing it, don't have time, whatever, then, you know, we will probably instruct you to actually write on inventories that called in my dispatcher, customer continues to refuse to check off the inventories, and have the customer sign it. And then, but by calling your dispatcher first, we will have all the proper notes in the system. So down the road, and they say they're missing that one book box with CDs or their medical books, you know, we have something to go by. And why wasn't this checked off at destination? Who confirmed or did not confirm what was actually delivered in the house? So that is a major problem, I know, when you show up to make your delivery, and because that happens more than we'd like to even be involved in on a weekly basis in this company.
Well, Jim, I've been here about 10 years now, and I get this question every year. What about
when you're going to go on a diet or what?
I don't know. I felt fat until you showed up.
Good.
Yeah.
There we go.
What do we do with the debris? The agents won't take it.
Yeah. Yeah, that came up in our last workshop last week, too. Without a doubt, when you deliver a 20,000-pound shipment, with all that, with the debris you have, if you were to put it in a dumpster, and I know that a big 30-yard dumpster probably averages around $600 on the East Coast for someone to pick up, right? So you're going to go in and you're going to blow half that dumpster out with your debris. So now the agent, you know, says, well, who's paying me my $300 to pull this dumpster? Then you'll get into situations where the agent will say, give me all that used pack material, because they're using it within their own COD program, right? So what I have found is that the driver just does not want to take the time to break it down enough. And I can see, you know, I've been involved in it. I've seen the driver have the conflict with the warehouseman. The warehouseman says, well, I'm not bringing all that stuff down your truck. I don't care what you're doing. Get out of here with it. Well, use your head. When you break it down, you already have your crew out there. Once you break the boxes down, stack them so that you can easily, when you pull back in the agent's yard, for them to take it off the truck and take it off your hands. But when you pull up and you open your back doors and it looks like a tornado went through your trailer. Are you kidding me? Are you expecting help? Are you expecting cooperation? It's not going to happen. So, you know, we have drivers that actually find recycling centers and take it to the recycling centers. So I think that to make a blanket statement saying trying to find someplace to put our debris, gentlemen, you're taking it too far, because if you take the necessary steps and efforting, it should not be a major issue with you. And if any of you have a problem with that, call me. I'll work you through it. I'm sorry. Was I a little firm on that one, or
a little?
Thanks. I'm sorry about it. The new, gentler, softer Jim. Let me get into that one. Okay. What's the next question?
Well, the issue along with not so much the packing material, it's all the paper and paper wrap, and you know, there's no way to condense that down really, and that's
well, you know, on a 20,000-pound tack job, if you put just the paper in my dumpster, I can live with that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I can live with that one. I know agents that open up used wardrobe boxes, and they say, put all the paper in there because I'm going to go use it and give it away to my COD customers. So, come on, folks. This is not rocket science stuff, and it's certainly not an obstacle to providing total customer satisfaction.
What about packing inventories? One of the drivers here says that pack crews aren't leaving them at residence.
I'd like to weigh in on that and say that there's no such thing as a pack inventory. The inventory is created by the person who loads the shipment. If the agent chooses to provide an inventory of the packing cartons and leave them at residence for the driver is still responsible for ensuring that all of those cartons are loaded on the truck.
Well, I can see that our business has a lot of conflict with that. In you know, the old program, people inventoried because they got paid by the number of boxes they packed. Okay. So we have some agents that believe, you know, I'm still going to protect myself on this. So I'm going to have my packers inventory the shipment, pull a copy for me, and then leave copies at residence, or when they bring it back to the warehouse, they know the driver's coming in the next day, and when they give the driver their paperwork, those inventories are in there. Okay. We have drivers that will take those inventories, instead of rewriting everything, they will use that inventory, and they'll walk through the home and they'll check off, right, what is on that packing inventory, and if there's anything missing, they will review that with the customer, and if need be, call the origin agent to tack the job. Okay. The other thing is that if I was an origin agent, I'm packing a job, and I have high-value items, and I'm packing that box, I always instruct my packers, you put a security seal on it, so when that driver comes in the next day, and he wants to open that box up to confirm, put his own security seal on it, I'm okay with that, because what good is it if I have high-value items and the box is open and somebody walks in the house the night before and takes something out? The driver truly, you know, and the customer is supposed to review what's in the contents in the box. So there is some confusion on that aspect of it, and I really don't want to debate that one here. But, you know, we have situations where our agents do packing inventories, but yes, you are the captain of the ship as a driver. You are responsible for everything that's coming out of that house, putting on the truck. And if you're not happy with the way the packing inventories were left behind for you, then you need to do a packing inventory. If you're willing to work off that packing inventory and it works and it confirms, and you're checking off, you know, and the packers used a yellow tag and you're going to use a red tag for the furniture, fine. You know, so next.
Okay, Todd would like us to remind all agents that on military shipments they're being paid packing based on the hundredweight, not the box count. He says they're seeing packing that is not nearly as dense as it should be, and this causes overflows.
Yeah, well, That's an inherent situation. It's not just on military shipment when you see balloon packing. That comes with training. And certainly, you know what? Those of you that want to train your folks, we have the University of TCS at the end of the month that has not only training in terms of a lot of things we're talking about today from a customer relations standpoint, but hands-on training on how to pack a dish pack, how to pack a 4 or 5, how not the balloon pack job that should have 30 dish pack and you know, your salesman figure 30 and you go out there and there's 55 when you're done. You know, so you know, we have that opportunity. As a matter of fact, if you have people you want to register, just get them here and we'll provide the room and the hotel and the food and everything else. You just pay to get the folks here. But we're running out of space on that, so if you are interested in sending someone to our University of TCS, we'll show you how to get on to register your people at the end of our workshop today. Sure. Are we done with the questions? We move on to CSA. Wow. Let's move on to CSA. John Flanagan, our Manager of Quality, Safety, and Fleet Services, will tell you everything we need to know about CSA. And I would project that there'll be lots of questions on this, John, when we're done.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. Yeah, CSA, why is it important? And we're going to get to why it's important, but this is a one-year-old program, a little bit more than a year now, and it is impacting our operations every day, every driver, every trip. Next slide, please. The CSA has given everyone a score or report card on their performance. There are 7 safety categories. Not on this list are vehicle accidents, also known as crash, and cargo securement, which we do not have any deficient scores. But of the other 5 categories, we are deficient, Stevens is, in all 5 of them. And those categories are unsafe driving, which is basically moving violations of any kind. Logs and hours of service. We're going to get into that in some depth. Driver fitness, and no, that's not when you go to the gym. It's if you have a proper CDL and valid medical card. Drug and alcohol possession and use. Our problem with that has been with drivers that may be transporting alcoholic beverages in their belly boxes or cab as not part of a shipment, even though it may not even be within reach of the driver. Just one short notice on that. It's never allowed. It'll put you out of service for 24 hours, and you're going to get a fine of $1,000 or more. So no alcohol in the cab whatsoever at any time, or even in the belly boxes if it's not part of the shipment. And vehicle maintenance, and that's where vehicles are not being maintained properly to assure safety. Next slide, please. So what is CSA? This is the government's definition. It's an initiative to improve large truck and bus safety, to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities that are related to CMVs. It's a new enforcement tool that allows the feds and the state partners to contact a larger number of carriers than they used to be able to in order to address safety problems and prevent crashes. This was rolled out to all the states in 2010, so just over a year, and established as a new nationwide system for making the roads safer for motor carriers and the public alike. Now I'm going to pause here. There's been a lot of criticism of CSA that the system has a lot of flaws and imperfections. That may be true, but let there be no mistake about it. It is the only yardstick that Stevens Van Lines and all the other carriers are being measured by in terms of safety. There's no other game in town. It is the only measurement tool that's available to both carriers and the general public. So it's a scorecard, just like a report card you might have gotten in school. And it covers all carrier operations, moving violations, roadside inspections, and vehicle accidents. points are assigned is rated by the severity of the violation. For carriers like Stevens, it's a rolling 2-year average. This information is available to the public. What's different on CSA from its predecessor, which was known as SafeStat, is it also impacts driver records. Any violations the driver accrues will stay on their record for a minimum of 3 years, and any accidents for a minimum of 5 years. Those driver records are available to safety investigators and go along as a permanent part of the driver's record on something called the PSP record. PSP stands for Pre-Employment Screening Program. When you apply for a job at any motor carrier, be it Stevens, United, or Mayflower, or any even freight company, your PSP record will be the first thing they look at.
Yeah, and John, great point there. What John just said there, you cannot run or drive away from your driving record from one carrier and thinking you have a clean slate with another carrier. The quality of your driving record is out there and is accessible to all carriers.
Correct.
Okay? You know, we keep forgetting that really our vehicle licenses, they are a privilege.
Right.
It is not a God-given right because you're a U.S. citizen that you have a driver's license. Okay? Anyone will tell you from any local government, municipality, or judge that you stand up in front of that your driving license is a privilege. And, sir, you abused it. So very important that everyone understands that.
Right. So after a year under CSA, we've come to the conclusion that we must improve safety performance. The deficiencies previously noted come from our roadside events, including being stopped for moving violations, vehicle inspections at the scale or at the roadside, and from vehicle accidents. Well, how did we get to have a deficient score? Let's look at our top 20 violations by frequency. Next slide, please. Here they are, and you can see the number 1 violation is logbook not current. The second one is logbook driving more after being on duty more than 14 hours. The next 4 are all vehicle maintenance. And number 7 is one of particular annoyance to me, failing to use seat belts while operating a CMV. That is not an option. That is a requirement, and it is and number 8, which is a big concern because it's what's called a red flag violation, is a false logbook. We have recently concluded some reviews and determined that false logbooks are something we are going to focus on. And you can see the rest of them, but they fall into the general categories of logs and hours of service, known as fatigue driving to the feds, vehicle maintenance, and unsafe driving. And we've got to fix all 3 of those categories. Next slide, please. CSA is like golf. You want to have a low score. And as you can see, the passing bar is the dark red bar, and we are above that. So in other words, not passing in the areas of unsafe driving, logs, driver fitness, drug and alcohol, and vehicle maintenance. We are passing on the cargo and crash measurements. So why should you care? Why is it important? It's extraordinarily important. It reflects our overall safety performance relative to our peers. So we are being benchmarked against other carriers. And specifically in the case of CSA, they have put all the van line carriers into similar peer groups. So we are being benchmarked against the Allies, Atlases, and Uniteds of the world. For Stevens, it's affecting our insurance premium. It can also affect potential lost business if a shipper or account or a government agency decides not to do business with us. We can be looking at sanctions by regulators, and that's certainly a concern for any kind of review that may come along. Also, it's going to impact you for downtime for increased inspections. We are currently have a inspection selection criteria of 100 out of a possible 100. What does that mean to you? If you're a Stevens driver and you come up to a scale and they have the manpower and opportunity to inspect you, you will get inspected because they are required to inspect you because our past track record is not favorable.
Yeah, it's like driving around with a target on us.
Exactly.
You know, and just so everyone understands, we have really taken a look at our most serious CSA offenders, and we are actually bringing them into the University of TCS at the end of the month for retraining.
Right.
That's how serious this situation is with the CSA scores, young people.
And agreed, Jim. Good point. And for drivers, through the CSA program, as Jim previously indicated, you can't run away from this. These violations cannot be erased. They are indelible wherever you work. Also, the idea of citations and fines comes into play. If you get put out of service or cited for a safety violation, in many states, a fine or citation will follow. I have seen some incredible numbers for citations and fines coming through, numbers that would stagger you. Of course, some of you already know about it because you've had to pay them.
Hey, John, let me ask you a question. I know that you seem to bring 2 or 3 situations a week to me where we actually have drivers driving right through toll gates that do not have the toll passes, and
right.
You know, these $100 and $50 fine, $150 fines.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that show up on in any way on our carrier's safety score?
The toll violations don't, because they're considered an economic offense as opposed to a safety offense. But we did have 3 instances in the last 6 months where drivers have driven on a highway that was closed to trucks, a major highway in Rhode Island. The fine for those is $3,000 a pop. So if you want to write a check for $3,000, have at it, but pay attention to the signage, because they do consider that a safety violation.
Well, I understand that particular bridge has about 18 signs that say you're getting close to Grandma's Pies, you're getting close to you're 100 yards from Grandma's Pies.
Pretty much.
Okay, that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, stay off the bridge.
By the way, for those
it's
of you,
now too late sign.
By the way, those of you who run the East Coast, it's the Pawtucket Bridge off of I-95, so stay off of it as well. But in a more serious vein, this is not optional, folks. I am here to tell you that we have no choice but to comply. We are in the process of creating a safety management plan with much more scrutiny of our worst offenders. There will be consequences for the offenders. We're also looking at an incentive program, a new incentive program, to reward those who have good safety records. We have to reduce accidents. And on a side note, we did a good job in 2011 in reducing DOT recordable accidents. We cut them by about 48%. So thanks to all of you for that. But the total number of accidents was unchanged, and our safety record in terms of violations was still compares unfavorably, not just with CSA, but with our others in our peer group, such as the other van lines, the major van lines especially. The only way to improve our CSA scores is to reduce safety violations, and that includes moving violations. We have to improve our CSA scores for Stevens and also for you, the driver. This impacts you today, tomorrow, and for the next 5 years. So I've titled this originally Back to Basics, and I've used that title because the violations are fundamental. Basics equals fundamental. We have to take a basic approach to correcting what we've done wrong over the last year. That starts off with defensive driving. It also includes keeping your logs current and legal. And it also includes maintaining and inspecting your truck as required. Next slide, please. So, what does drive defensively mean? It means manage the speed and space around your rig. It's essential to avoiding accidents. You need to drive defensively. You have to avoid moving violations. Many of you know we have a third-party observation company out there called IMDS. We've cut speeding violations in half in a year. I'm pleased with that. But we still have violations for tailgating, or also known as following too close, some lane violations, that's trucks using the wrong lane, and the most annoying, as earlier mentioned, seat belts. I've heard all the excuses why truck drivers don't want to wear seat belts. They have a much lower compliance in seat belt use than car drivers. Those excuses simply don't wash. If you were a scientist or an engineer, they would tell you that wearing a seatbelt greatly increases your chances of surviving a crash. In any case, it's the law. It's a federal law. There's no choice.
Well, John, even if you, now, I've never driven an 80,000-pound rig, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen the math about when you slam on your brakes, you know, and you know how every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going 60 miles an hour and you slam on your brakes, if you don't have a seatbelt on, I got to believe you're going to end up on your dashboard.
Let me depart here briefly. About 3 years ago, we had an incident where a driver left the road for unrelated reason and ran into a stand of trees and did not have a seatbelt on, and he did go through the windshield and was very severely injured, a lifetime injury. And had that seatbelt been in place, he would have, the worst thing he might have got was a shoulder bruise from the belt.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is if you have your seatbelt on, your ability to probably gain control or maintain control of the rig increases tremendously.
Right. Again, we're seeing too many seatbelt violations, and those are the only ones of the moving violations that are increasing. That has to stop. So what is defensive driving? It's driving to save lives, time, and money in spite of the conditions around you and the actions of others. In other words, drive defensively in spite of the other guy. Why? We're professionals. Next slide, please. Logs current and legal. The most common violation is not current to the last change of duty status. You've got to get in the habit of changing that logbook every time you get in and out of the truck. Keep in mind there's an 11-hour driving limit, after which you must have 10 hours off before you can drive again. And one that becomes problematic for van line drivers, and I've been there and I know about it, is 14-hour on-duty limit, after which no time driving. You can continue to work, but you can't drive after that 14th hour. Logs need to be submitted to headquarters complete and on time and accurate. We will be scrutinizing logs and auditing them for accuracy for time and date and location to make sure you're turning in accurate logs. Falsified log is a major red flag offense.
John, you know, that previous slide that was up here, Jerry, you know, what I see here is a big neon sign that flashes proper time management skills.
Amen.
Okay? You know, John talks about always being aware of what's around your rig when you're driving. But I've been in many conversations over the last 30 days with a lot of our drivers that are very concerned about the CSA and about electronic onboard recorders and, you know, how the government is mandating safety and so forth and so on. And I will say this so everybody understands this, that I'm a supporter of proper time management skills, because too often I get into conversations with our drivers and I ask them, why are you where you're at, or why are you not where you're at? And when I take a look at their dispatch, and I take a look at the point where they were dispatched, and I clearly understand what people can do relative to log time and sleeper time, and I walk through the math, and there is no reason why that driver should not be at that customer's home. But yet I'm saying, he's telling me he's out of hours, he's out of this, he's out of that, and then we tracked down a COM data card where he pulled it, and that was 300 miles off route. So what's really, you know, fortunate, unfortunate, however you want to look at it, the new government rules and the CSA is going to improve total customer satisfaction. It's going to improve many of our PVOs as business people, because that latitude you had to say, well, I can do this, I can drive 5 hours over there and visit so-and-so and still be where I'm at, I'll get it delivered that day. Oh, well, yeah, you ended up showing up at 3 o'clock when the customer was looking for you at 8:30. And now you have your logs all messed up, and your time-stamped devices where you bought fuel and what have you do not pass the smell test when you go across the roadside inspection. And we see it all the time. And this is stuff that is must go away. So
that's great on the time management. Actually, last week we've seen the first, they did announce that they were going to do this. Washington and Oregon are now putting the license plate numbers and date and time of trucks entering their ports of entry online with each other, so that if you get stopped, let's say you came into Washington at 3 p.m. on Friday and you get stopped at 6 p.m. on Saturday in Oregon, they can look at your logbook, and that information is now posted online, and they'll go back and look at that previous day's log in Oregon. We have had a driver put out a service for falsifying their logs by being off, putting that he was in Tacoma, Washington, when in fact he was crossing the port of entry coming into Washington from Idaho.
Yeah, I remember the day when a driver, all right, I'll pay a $100 fine, because it was more convenient for him to pay the $100 fine. Days are gone, because now that infraction is on our CSA scores, does not go away. Our insurance is being impacted. Our potential to gain more business or lose business is being impacted. Your future livelihood is being impacted as a driver.
Right.
Okay, so it's all about attitude and time management. That's going to keep us in line in terms of our log issues.
That's right, and that's right now. It's the biggest mountain we have to climb is hours of service. As Jim mentioned, EOBRs. We started our experiment with Zeta. We've ordered 5 units, and one's actually on the road. We're going to put the other ones on soon, and it is a good tool, but it is just a tool. The driver's still responsible for managing their time. Right. It doesn't give them the option of, the only thing it does is it helps you keep track of time in an automated fashion. It doesn't tell you that I shouldn't have stayed so long at home and now I got to rush to make up, which is, I've seen that time and time again.
Yeah, and Greg will be going into that a little bit in his presentation when we're
next one, please, Jimmy. Other part of back to basics, and we've seen this, is inspect and maintain your truck, pre and post trips. A little side note on that, a recent review of the pre and post trip inspections says that on up to 18% of the logs submitted, the DVIR is incomplete or not, is completed incorrectly or not completed at all. Guys, it's on your log. It needs to be completed every day. It needs to be, and it shouldn't be just sitting behind the pencil, behind the steering wheel with a pencil and writing in that everything's okay. You need to get out there and do your pre and post trip. You also need to get your periodic inspections. We're in one of the intervals right now for the spring inspection. February, March, and April, due no later than May 1 in Saginaw. And that is your opportunity to get ready for the busy season. Get your truck ready. You've had all winter. Let's get those things repaired. A periodic inspection is an A to Z, front to back inspection of your whole rig. Let's get them in. Let's get them in on time. If you get a roadside inspection, and this is a habit we're terrible at complying with, it needs to be sent to headquarters within 24 hours, including proof of repairs. This is not my rule. This is not Stephen's rule. This is a federal rule. If you have a roadside inspection, it needs to be submitted to my office by email or fax within 24 hours. And if you had a vehicle defect, you have to have proof of repairs before you roll that truck again. So let's have more compliance on that. What is a daily inspection? The minimums, and again, these are just the minimums: service and parking brakes, steering, lights, tires, horn and wipers, mirrors, fifth wheel, coupling devices, your wheels and rims. Make sure you got your emergency equipment. And the minimums are just that. You should voluntarily do more. You don't want to get stuck in the middle of nowhere, broke down. And that DVIR, like I mentioned, driver vehicle inspection report, every day on the log. And if there's a defect, fix it before you roll. So I'll wrap it up here. Again, I'm not going to try to take too much of your time. Safety violations on the record indicate that we have forgotten the fundamentals we learned and we started driving. And that to me is troublesome. We have forgotten the fundamentals. We are professionals. It's our responsibility to the public, to Stevens Van Lines, and to ourselves to do things the right way. So what are back to basics? Driving properly, defensively, logs current and legal and accurate, and inspecting and maintaining your truck as you're required to do so. So I'll climb down off of my soapbox and answer any questions that you might have.
Well, we have a couple. Todd, I'd like to know if you can discuss or hit the highlights of the new cell phone hands-free law.
Oh, excellent. We've had the policy in place at Stevens for 3 years, so it doesn't really change it, but other than you're going to get a humongous fine up to $2,700 for if you get caught with a handheld cell phone operating a commercial motor vehicle. That rule went into effect, I want to say, January 4th of this year for the feds, but we've had that as a policy at Stevens for 3 years. No handheld cell phones, period.
So your first time you hit $2,700.
Up to now that's a state fine. They have up to they can fine you up to $2,700 for the first offense and $11,000 to the carrier.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
Well,
expensive.
You know, when you start talking about, let's face it, our local governments, our state governments, and federal governments looking for money. So the most diplomatic and political way that they can increase their coffers is by revenue that comes in through making, quote, the country safer. So if you don't think that the inspectors and police officers, besides being told to have a safe day out there, this is the way that they increase revenue, you know, because you can't argue with it, you know. So, guys, pay attention.
Right. And Jim is exactly right. I have seen fine schedules raised in many states for all the obvious reasons. Any other questions, Greg?
Yeah. John would like to know what is the required loading and unloading times that must be on a logbook?
The time it took you to do the loading and unloading. If it took you 2 hours, you put down 2 hours.
Let me make sure I understand that. So if I started at 8, finished at 10, I would log myself from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for loading.
That's on duty, not driving, correct.
Thank you.
If you decide to fudge it, trust me, it would come up. God forbid you would be involved in a vehicle accident and you fudged your log, because trust me, they would go back and do the investigation, find out just how many hours you did have on duty before if you were involved in a serious injury accident.
Yeah, did you ever hear that saying one lie begets another lie and that lie begets 2 more lies?
Right.
Guys, what we have seen, and we certainly saw it we had the federal motor carrier in here about 3 weeks ago, and they did an audit. And it's interesting, you know, people that look at these things all day, and then when you have your review with them at the end of their time here, it's eye-opening to see someone that starts on a Monday, and they drag their logs through Sunday, and the auditor actually lays the set of logs out in front of you and go, there is no way that this could be done. Bottom line is, when I looked at that, there was no way that driver could remember what he did or where he was doing what. It was a guess me, you know. It was like throwing your logs up on a wall and throwing a dart at it. You know, and if you don't think that this doesn't come home to roost, it does. So, you know.
Well, and the other thing, too, that we found was now that there's more and more electronics out there, there's more and more ways for them to compare your times of where you were at, when you were there. You got fuel receipts, you got toll receipts,
scale tickets.
Scale tickets. Now they also can check to see where you used your comm card or when you cashed a comm check. So it's getting very difficult to try to cover up.
Right. It's my understanding that all the 11 western states are going to do that automated port of entry within the next 12 to 24 months, where they will digitally be able to see where you're crossing into and out of the states and construct trips from that information, and they will be sharing that since there are ports of entry in all those states.
That's kind of interesting, because if truck A, let's say it takes 20 hours to drive from, or 15 hours to drive from the most northern border, port of entry in Illinois, to southern Illinois, right? Illinois is a long state, just like California. So they're going to calculate that if you would be driving straight through, how many hours it would take you to get to the border?
No,
Did I understand that right?
No,
Explain that.
mostly it's used to verify what you're putting on your logs. If you cross the border, if you cross the port of entry at 8 p.m. on Friday,
Okay.
and then 3 days later they're looking at your log and you said you didn't cross the border at 8 p.m. on Friday. You know, you put it on Thursday, you put it on Saturday.
Okay.
It's basically, just another check and balance, as you indicate, on the time-stamped. It's another time-stamped document to check where you were and when you were there.
Well, I can just imagine if my mother had those type of tools to track me down. But
Yeah, right. Any other questions?
Some of this still, well, basically the question is sometimes they're being dispatched with inappropriate times, like driving 3 hours, then loading 8,000 pounds, and then expected to drive another 10 hours.
okay, you know, that came up in our other workshop, and I think that when you get a situation that you cannot do and that is not correct, you need to call myself, Jim Welsh, or Ken Spencer. Period. And if someone's put a load together or a plan together, that, you know, many times a planner will put a trip together, and you accept that trip, and all of a sudden one of the customers on that trip changes some service request, which then impacts your ability to run that trip in a legal and manageable way. Okay? So at that point in time, when you recognize that, you need to talk to Ken or myself if somebody within the somebody else in the organization is telling you to do it anyway. Okay, because I certainly want to know if someone's saying that. But there are things that change that, you know what, we have to call a timeout. We have to call a timeout, you know, and I don't want to say I hear this all the time, Greg, you know, that type of comment. You know, when you call me and you make that comment to me, the number one thing is I start looking at your logs and I start looking at your last 3 days. I tell me what your last 3 days were like. Because there are also people out there that do not know how to run 10, sit down for 10, and run 10. So we have too many drivers that themselves aren't sure what a legal trip is. So, and I see confusion there. 2 weeks ago, I had an agent turn down I just had a driver turn down a 25,000-pound shipment because he said he couldn't deliver what he was delivering and be where he had to be. I got him on the phone. I showed him specifically how he could deliver what he was doing and exactly how he would have to conduct himself to stay legal and be where he had to be. So, you know, you need to get another set of eyes on what people are asking you to do. And certainly, if you believe somebody is telling you to do something that's not right, you need to call Ken or myself. I know all of you have my cell phone number because I know I've talked to every one of you after hours one time or another, okay? Right. If you can call me for money, you can call me if you have a problem with your dispatch.
Man, I know a lot of this seems to have a negative tone, and yeah. CSA scores are a concern because we're not comparing favorably with our other carriers in our peer groups or with other van lines. However, I do want to say that we are a safe carrier. We have among the lowest crash rates among any of the carriers, and most of our drivers are doing a great job committed to safety. But it only takes a small number of drivers that are consistent, not performing up to safe standards, that will affect the CSA scores. The bar is very high. Everyone else is trying to do the same thing we are, and we are being graded on a curve. So we have to be better than our peers. Yeah. So the time to act is now. And as I said before, drive defensively, keep logs current and legal, and inspect your trucks. And that will avoid violations, and it will improve the scores. I want to thank everyone for their commitment to safety.
The question, Greg?
Well, I got a question about, I think it's about the law that's held up right at the moment.
Which one is that?
What about the 30 minutes that they're saying you need to take a break prior to driving?
That doesn't go into effect until next year, so
Okay.
that's 2013. So we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it, because there's multiple lawsuits right now against Federal Motor Carrier on the hours of service, and who can possibly predict how those are all going to turn out?
Hey, John, how many Stevens qualified drivers do we have?
Just under 500.
Okay. So, you know, to put a real positive spin to everything here, because we don't like to always be talking negative, when we take a look and we have the ability and we look at our top 25 offenders, you know, so 25 out of, what you tell?
Just under about 490.
Okay, so 25 out of 500 folks are giving us tremendous heartburn and poor grades with our CSA. And quite truthfully, some of them we just had to cut our business relationship with, because we did not feel that they were committed to making the necessary changes in order to improve. The other thing is that we are bringing those folks in here for direct retraining. So, you know what, I think, that brings it about 94%, some of that, 95% of all of you are doing a great job out there. A great job, and we want to really thank you for that.
I guess the one thing I'd like to reiterate or point out is this affects you too. I'm recruiting drivers, and I've probably had at least a half dozen over the last year or 2 years since CSA has started that we've turned down simply because of their driving record that shows out there now. And 3-4 years ago, we probably would have hired them in a heartbeat because that information was not available to us. But now, every trucking company out there is looking at your driving record before they even think about hiring you.
And whether you leave the household industry to drive a dump truck and or you try to go work for YRC, I'm going to tell you, you won't get a job, because they are not, regardless of all the shortage for CDL individuals out there, the stockholders, the upper management says you will not hire those people that can affect our business from a safety standpoint. So as much pressure it is on Greg to get drivers in here for, you know, he cannot hire people that are not safe. So that brings us to Greg. And being the communicator Greg is, he is going to talk to you about how we are going to improve our communication skills amongst ourselves. Go ahead, Greg.
Howdy ho there. We want to cover communications. You know, communications involves using a device. In today's world, if your phone looks anything like any of those, we think it's time for you to upgrade. Time to join the 21st century. You need a device that you can do more than just talk to or talk through. On the backup, you know, we need to get you up to the smartphone level or the BlackBerry stage, or if you're happy with your little flip phone, maybe get you a Galaxy tablet so that you can do more than just talk on a phone. What can you do with these things? You got to, you know, we need you to be able to talk to us, but with these devices, you can do a lot more than just talk. And as a result, you can save yourself a lot of money. For instance, your paperwork. Right now, you're probably taking it, going into the truck stop, filling out a UPS or a FedEx envelope, throwing it in there, and it's probably costing you, I don't even know what it costs nowadays, 30, 40 bucks?
Yeah, right. Be around 35 bucks. That's not counting if you have to make copies someplace.
Right. So even at 30 bucks a pop, You figure on an average you might haul 70 orders a year. That's $2,100 that